This is Hunter Wade of the Athletes Lounge podcast, and I'm here with my guest.
Eric Campbell, former baseball player, but now coach with Top Tier.
So, just jumping right into it, Eric, you were a second round pick in '04, right? In the
Yeah,
MLB
correct.
draft. So, did you have any expectation of getting drafted at all, or did you just get a call of someone informing you're a second round pick in the MLB draft?
Well, going into my junior year in high school, I had no idea, and kind of went down to Marietta, Georgia, East Cobb, played in a tournament for the Indiana Yankees, which was Buddy Swift, coached that team. Had a really good tournament down there, and after that, it basically from that summer on, I pretty much knew baseball was going to be a future. And the Braves had Sherrod Klingscales was the scout, the area scout here. He had kept close tabs with me. Roy Clark was the scouting director with the Braves. And going into that draft, we kind of had they called and asked if I was still going to be there at number 71, pick number 71, if I would take a certain amount of money. And if I accepted that, then if I was still there at 71, I knew the Braves were going to take me. So going into the draft that day, we were out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at an All-American game. And I knew I wasn't going to go past 71. So it was stress. It was still a little stressful because it was a new situation, but I didn't have the same maybe anxiety of some of the guys that may not have an idea of what was going on.
So, I guess when you get drafted, did you have to almost shut down any other athletic activity until they signed you?
Well, so the draft happened in the middle of the day. We had that All-American game that night. So I made sure that it was okay that I went ahead and played, and they had no problem with that. But they flew up. We actually went to the old Jamaica Inn is where we signed the contract. They flew there in Fort Branch. They flew up 2 days later, and we went ahead and signed the contract. And then I think within a week, I was on a plane down to Orlando to join down at Disney at the spring training complex to get everything situated and start my professional career then.
So, well, that moved fast. I just have put that there in my head. That moved pretty fast. So, when you got to what was I guess your first assignment? Was it like rookie ball? What?
So when I got there, they call it extended spring training. It was one of those where so spring training had already broke. Teams were already broke to all their affiliates. And then the draft happens. And then they have what's called, for them, it was Gulf Coast League. There's Gulf Coast League, and then there's a PC, something out in Arizona. It's basically for the younger guys, just drafted, or guys that didn't make a full year's club. So they've got two short seasons. Back then, they've taken a ton of them out now in the last year or two after COVID. But so I started in the Gulf Coast League, which was a short season rookie ball, which was in Orlando. So we played at Orlando, Lakeland, which was the Tigers, Winter Haven was the Indians, all those teams that were down there in that area. The Astros were, they were down there somewhere. I can't remember some of the names, the places, but it was just all the spring training places. We used the facility at the Wide World of Sports, and so that's where I started my first year. Was basically it was 60 or 70 games is what I got in after I got drafted.
So I guess you have to notice. I guess the competition level jumps up severely once you're playing with everyone else that's drafted.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest jump for me was being around here. If you saw 85, 86 mile an hour from a pitcher, it was at that time was considered pretty hard. Now, granted, when I was playing, 93, 94 was a plus arm. You maybe saw down there with some Latin guys, we'd see 98, 99, but that was a rarity. Not like it is now. I mean, everybody throws 98, 99. So, yeah, I mean, I went from, low 80s, mid 80s to jumping right in and seeing, upper 90s. The slowest guys down there were probably 91, 92. So, and the craziest thing about being down there, it's young guys that are trying to throw hard to light up a radar gun, and they might not exactly know where it's going. So you're digging in the box, and You might they might throw one behind you and then the next two on the corner. So that was the hardest thing to adjust to. Using wood bats going from high school aluminum, I'd used enough wood bats to understand, the difference. But some guys they struggled a little bit with it. But that was the biggest thing was the velocity, and not seeing that very often around here.
I meant to ask this a little bit earlier. What all sports did you do in high school?
I just played basketball and baseball, um, which I 4 years with basketball and then 4 years with baseball. But at that time, on a travel basketball team with the Gibson Southern team forever. So pretty much every sport, both those two sports led right into the next one. So if I wasn't in the wintertime, I was playing basketball, and then right when basketball was over, it was baseball season. So I just went back and forth for 4 years basically.
Which one did you actually enjoy more?
I enjoy basketball more, really, to be honest. It was my first love. My dad coached 8th grade over at Owensville ever since I was born, basically. So I lived in school. When I got out of school at Owensville, I hopped in the gym, and Dad would let me run up and down with the 8th graders. So I lived in the basketball gym forever. So that was my first love. And even in high school, Coach O'Brien, I enjoyed playing basketball. I just, I mean, I'm barely 6 foot, and a future in basketball wasn't going to be the thing. So I'm glad that summer going into my junior year kind of jump started that. Before that, I was thinking about walking on at some basketball schools. Before that,
so you stayed in the same affiliate, or not the same affiliate. You stayed in the same farm system your entire career, right?
no, I jumped. I was with the Braves for 6 years.
Yeah.
Got my release there and went to the Philadelphia Phillies. I went there for spring training, got cut on the last day of spring training. And then I went to Fargo, North Dakota, Fargo Redhawks, which is a Northern League independent ball. I played there for that summer, and then the Reds signed me.
Which I remember that. I don't know why I forgot that, but I knew that.
I went to the Reds for that year. I started at Bakersfield, California, high A, and then got called up to Carolina to double A. Finished out the year there, and then Seattle called that offseason and offered me a spot. So I went to Seattle for that year, and then I got released not too long after the All-Star break in double A with the Mariners. And then I went back to Fargo because I enjoyed that was some of the most fun I've ever had playing baseball up there. So I finished off up there, and that's whenever I decided I got this job with UPS and decided to shut it down.
What was the best, affiliation? Was there any organization that was clearly run better, or in your opinion, or was there any, don't step on toes, but
I would say the Braves were run extremely well, but they were more of you had to have your pants up. You had to wear basically knickers. You couldn't wear them down, touch your shoes. No facial hair. They had a bunch of rules that, looking back, it was probably to try to help develop, a routine or stuff like that. Which at the time I was 18 years old. Kind of got thrown into it from straight from day one at 18, living on your own, trying to manage all that stuff. So I wasn't mentally ready for it at that point. Physically and athletically, I was fine, but the mental side, So looking back, I should have enjoyed that. I didn't as much because of the fact that it felt like they were trying to control everything you did. Now with the Red, I enjoyed my time with the Reds the most, but most of that was my manager in Bakersfield was Ken Griffey Sr. So at that time, I was an older guy playing at that level. So I got treated a little bit different as, a so-called veteran, I guess is what you'd call it. So I spent a lot of time in the coach's office talking, picking Ken Griffey's brain, talking about the Big Red Machine and all that stuff. And I enjoyed that the most out of anything.
So that's a pretty fun manager to have.
Oh, he was He's laid back. He doesn't. I mean, he just lets you play, which is awesome. That's why I enjoyed Fargo so much with the Red Hawks. Is they let you do whatever you need to do, get ready. They don't have a set thing, so you could bring your own routine that you felt got you ready for a game. Um, and that's what the Braves wouldn't do. The Braves, you had to take BP every day on the field. You couldn't take a day off. I mean, stuff like that. Once you get to a spot and you understand what it takes to get yourself ready, you kind of like to stick with it. And baseball guys, and I'm extremely superstitious when it comes to baseball. So if I had something I did well the day before and I had 3 or 4 hits, then I wanted to repeat it. But the Braves wouldn't allow you to do stuff like that. So, but Ken Griffey was, I mean, he let you do whatever you needed to do. He understood. He's been there. And then obviously talking about his son a lot was also pretty cool.
So yeah, his son may have been good at the baseball thing.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah, so I guess when you're in Atlanta and you're a prospect in Atlanta for sure. Is there increased focus on you in Atlanta, or did everyone kind of get equal treatment?
No, they don't. I mean, nobody ever gets equal
No.
treatment. It was that was so being drafted where I was and being a priority for 5 6 years. You got a lot longer leash to fail for sure. But at that time when I got drafted, if I always kind of go back, if you look at the numbers I had the first 2 or 3 years in the minor leagues with Atlanta, if that would have happened now, I would have been in the big leagues. I felt pretty quick. But back then it was, he's a high school kid. Let's keep him in the minor leagues, get him at bats and all that stuff. And so there wasn't as much of urgency to push guys to the big leagues like there is now, like Jackson Holiday with the Orioles. I mean, he's probably going to be up there before the year's over. Now, granted, he deserves it, but back then that was unheard of. Even the college guys got drafted. Matt Wieters was my draft. He was my age. He went to Georgia Tech, but even that, it took him out of Georgia Tech. It still took him almost the full 3 years in college and then almost a full year in the minor leagues before he got called up. Nowadays, they send guys up as quick as can be. So the Braves were, obviously they gave me, I hit in the 3 hole forever until my prospect status kind of went away. They gave me every opportunity, which I was grateful for. And of course, guys, college seniors that signed for $1,000, they basically have to come in and just rake from the beginning. If not, then they'll find somebody else. So yeah, there is a lot of give and take when it comes to that.
So well, now they rush people to the majors because they can just go ahead and sign them to their actual contract before, so they don't have to wait. Pretty much is
Right.
what it looks like now. So they don't have to fight through free agency. But when you're a prospect and there's, I guess, that increased focus, are I mean, are you just trying to hit a bomb every night?
I mean, I was the type that my hand-eye coordination was awesome for that age. I found the biggest thing for me in all of the draft reports and stuff where I found the barrel. I could find the barrel. So a lot of times I wish I could swing and miss more. So that way I didn't get, if I got fooled on a pitch, instead of swinging and missing, I'd hit it and hit a weak ground ball. So, back then they were still wanting average. It wasn't all the launch angles and stuff like that. So, I prided myself on still hitting home runs, but I was still hitting in the 265 to 290 range was about where I stuck, except for the 1 year. Well, the Braves, my last year with AA, I struggled pretty bad. But before that, I felt like I did a pretty good job of hitting for both average and power. So nowadays they could care less really about the batting average. It's all analytically driven, which I don't understand 90% of that anyway. But that is what it is. But so I tried to be as well-rounded of a baseball player as I could be. But of course, yeah, the home runs were the reason why I got drafted. So that's what I tried to incorporate when every at bat. You don't try to go up and hit home run, you try to go up and hit as hard as you can. But there are sometimes when you walk up there and you're got a little extra juice trying to get one out, of course.
So you said you kind of slumped your 6th year?
Yeah, I struggled. Well, for one, that I I didn't come into spring training in shape at all. That was the year that Braden was born, and I didn't do what I needed to do that off season to get myself ready. So I came in probably 15 pounds heavier than what I normally have. So I was fighting all spring training, trying to, cut the weight and get back down to my plane. And it never, that whole year never transpired. And there were some things that happened in the organization with Chipper getting re-signed whenever I was told that he was either going to retire or they were going to let him test free agency, and I was going to have a chance to make it up there. And that didn't happen. So I lost a little faith in the organization, and I went about it the wrong way as far as mentally how to prepare. I should have came in, ready to go, and I didn't. And that's why I'm so, with this top tier and coaching younger kids that's the biggest thing I try to teach is the failures that I had. And that was mostly the mental side of being ready and always giving yourself the chance to be where you want to be. I failed at that a couple of years, and that's what cost me. And that's really what pretty much ended my career. I got a couple more years of opportunity with some other teams, but once you lose that prospect status with the team that had the investment in you, it's really hard to get where you need to be. Nevin did it and worked his way up to the big leagues. Granted, the catching position, if you can catch and throw, you might not have to hit as well, but he could still do both. But he was one of those guys that got everything out of his ability. I wasn't the opposite, but I wasn't to that level. I had some talent, and there towards the end, I got away from the work, and that's why I'm so hard on the kids that I coach now about that, because I realized what it did to me and what I could have been, and I don't want that to happen to somebody else.
So, did you get moved around the field at all during your career, or did you stay in the same place?
When I got drafted, the Braves still put me at short for that first spring when I went down to Gulf Coast. But the whole idea was to move me to third. So they were going to let me go ahead and play that first spring or that first year when I got drafted, play it short, just try not to throw too much at me right off the bat. So then I went down to extended fall. During the fall league and stuff, they still had some stuff down in Orlando. So I went down there and worked all fall with the infield, Rafael Belliard, and moved me to third and tried to learn as much as I could. So that way, coming into spring training next year, I was ready to go. But after that, I played third basically my whole time with Atlanta. Cincinnati, I played third. They moved me a little bit to the corner outfield spot, just to get some more innings. And then actually Seattle, when they signed me, they asked me if I could move to second. So I went out there to Arizona for a fall right after I signed, and worked out there pretty hard at second base. So I played short or third and second with Seattle a little bit.
So when you were you said you're an independent ball at one point, right?
Yes.
Was that the most, I guess, nervous you were during baseball? Because when you're an independent ball after you've been, I guess, in Double A, yeah, have to be a little nervous, right?
Yeah, but it also is kind of relieving. You go about it. The easiest way for me to explain independent ball is they don't have a minor league system. If you're on that team, that's their big league team. So
Yeah.
they give you a little bit more reins to do what you need to do. And it's a bottom line business with the independent ball. If you produce, you get to keep playing. If not, they'll try to find somebody else. So I guess there'd be pressure there, but I actually felt like it was more like baseball to me. The minor leagues and stuff, for lack of better words, there's politics that go involved in it. You've got coaches trying to work their way up the system as well, just like players. And, they're going to try to put their 2 cents into somebody. And if you do well, they can go back and say, hey, I helped him get to, where he needed to be. Well, independent ball, it's you play and you produce, or they find somebody else. So I enjoyed that part. It was more like just showing up and playing baseball, as opposed to you got to follow all these rules and make sure that you don't get fined and do all this stuff. So I enjoyed I had the most fun I've ever had playing baseball in Fargo. Um, it was more relaxing for me. I was able now. Granted, the competition wasn't. I mean, it was a high A to double A type atmosphere as far as pitching and other position players wise. It wasn't the cream of the crop. It wasn't big league talent by any means, but there was guys that had big league time that came down. Um, but it was more of a. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was more of a recreational type. It put me back. It made me feel like I was a young kid again playing baseball. Really.
Because I guess any fun ballparks that you get to play in, any that stick out?
Any fun ballparks?
Yeah.
I love Chattanooga. The Lookouts. It was the Dodgers Double A. Beautiful stadium, all turf. But for some reason, I love that ballpark. I loved Rome, Georgia, which was the Braves low A. Right outside, it was right outside of Atlanta. They tried to do the field dimensions and everything were exactly like Atlanta at that time. That they always had 67,000 fans almost every night, which was a lot for a minor league stadium. You know, anytime you can get that kind of attendance at a minor league ballpark, so it was always packed. There wasn't any out in California in the California League that I really enjoyed. Bakersfield was a was a dump, really. I mean, it's sad to say, but it was a dump.
Is that the
There,
one that faces the sun?
Bakersfield,
Yeah.
I can't. I tell you, it was so bad. The field, the conditions were. I mean, there was high school fields around here that were twice as good as far as condition wise. And there's another one that I remember the bad ones a lot more than I do the good ones because Savannah Sand Gnats, that field down there. I'm trying to think. I think it was the Nationals at the time I was playing. They called them sand gnats. They're the most annoying. They're not mosquitoes, but I tell you what, they were awful. There was only a certain type of spray you could put on to keep them things off of you. I remember that. But no, I love Chattanooga was by far my most favorite ballpark to play.
Any park you want to just roast, you're allowed to because it's
Oh,
funny.
Savannah at that time was, and then when I went with the Reds, and I don't know if they still have a team out there in Bakersfield, but it was a rough area, and that field was awful.
So you said Fargo was fun. Fargo's not that small.
No,
Fargo's so I imagine it's fun because it's got a big small town, bigger than small town, but smaller than huge town vibe. And I mean, it's Fargo. This sounds fun.
yeah, I enjoyed it. North Dakota State was there. Their football facility was right beside the Newman Outdoor Field, the field that Fargo plays at, the Red Hawks, and of course they've been so good at the football level to end up what I don't know 1AA or whatever it is. They've won a ton of national championships, so they've got a very loyal fan base there. I mean, it was nothing to get 4 or 5 thousand at that ballpark. And I enjoyed. We went up to Winnipeg. That Winnipeg, Canada, was one of our teams in our division. So going up to Canada was pretty cool to play. It was a real nice ballpark up in Winnipeg. I mean, there was a lot of places that I enjoyed. Fargo reminded me a lot of Rome, Georgia. It's bigger and Rome had Atlanta right beside it. So if you wanted to catch that bigger city feel, it was right there. But the fans were awesome. We had host families that put us up and let us stay, to help out with rent and stuff. And I got lucky and had a really nice host family in Fargo for 1 year that I was there. I really enjoyed it.
Because is there did you prefer playing in the bigger, I guess, the bigger markets of, I guess, the minor leagues as compared to the smaller towns?
Oh yeah, I mean you enjoy playing. Like when you get to that level, you want to play in front of a ton of people. It helps with your the adrenaline and getting you up for a game. I enjoyed. Chattanooga had a good turnout. I never got to play in Dayton, Ohio, which is the Reds. The Reds, and they were notorious for like 10 years straight. They sold out every game. and I had always heard about that. And when I got to the Reds, I think they were a low A team though, so I obviously didn't want to go play there. But those type of atmospheres, the Thirsty Thursdays, every time we played on Thursdays, it was always buy one, get one free beer. So you always knew going into a Thursday away game that you were going to get a good crowd, and they were obviously going to get a little inebriated and want to yell at you. So those were the fun times I remember. But yeah, when you go to the smaller towns and Augusta, Georgia, right where the Masters is played, the Giants had a team there. We played, and nobody cared about baseball in that little area. It was all about the Masters and golf. So you go there and there's 400 or 500 people, and it's rough. I mean, you still have a job to do, but it's always fun to do it in front of a bunch of people.
Do the players talk about what the attendance looks like?
Pitchers usually do. The pitchers that aren't pitching, they got nothing else to do, so they'll stand and see what kind of crowd is. When you first walk out to warm up, you've got a pretty good idea. You kind of scope it out a little bit. But then again, the more you play at certain places, you know what's going to happen. You know what to expect when you get out there about 30 minutes before the game to get stretched and everything. You got an idea if it's going to be a packed house or day games were on the weekends were good. Sometimes whenever school's out, you're going to get a lot bigger crowd. Parents let kids stay out a little bit later night during the week on night games. So, weekends were always bigger. But yeah, I mean, the pitchers, they're strange anyway. But that was something that they always liked to do, was to look in the stands and try to guess the attendance and stuff like that.
I asked Nevin this. Are relievers just that bizarre?
Oh, left-handed relievers are the worst. You can pick, like, it's funny. And Murphy, Jason, and Nevin and I, when we do tryouts and stuff, we always try to pick out the pitchers or the left-handed pitcher, and it's crazy. It's funny. There's something about it. Relievers and left-handed relievers, you can pick them out. They're quirky, but some of them guys are just crazy. I mean, you got to be crazy to come in a hostile situation and try to get outs and at that level. I mean, it's nerve-wracking. I mean, closers and stuff like that, you've got to have a different mindset to be able to do that at the highest level. So it fits right in with the way they go about everything else. But yeah, Nevin's right, which he dealt with them a lot more than I did, having to catch him. But you always know when you walk into a clubhouse, those are the loudest guys, the ones doing the most jokes, pulling the most pranks, stuff like that.
So you said you're superstitious. What were those superstitions?
Oh man, if I went to Subway and got a sandwich and I had 2 or 3 hits, I had to go to that same Subway and get the same damn sandwich every day until I didn't get a hit. I mean, it was just stupid stuff like that. If I went golfing that morning with some guys and had a good day, hit a home run or had a couple multi-hit games, I had to go do it again. It's just, you set your glove in the same spot in between every inning. I mean, it's just the stuff that might get overlooked, but when you do it and you're superstitious like that, it's you become you understand it. If somebody moves something, you're like, well, what happened? Something's going on. So, but yeah, I mean, food, eating, pregame stuff, that was the biggest thing for me. And then the routine part of it, which is a huge thing that I try to teach these kids, is to develop a routine. That way it kind of helps with your superstition. So, because you do it every day, and it kind of keeps your mindset in that mind frame of having, you don't have to worry about, well, did I do this? Did I do that? So, but yeah, food, eating, subs, stuff like that was one of the biggest things for me if I had a good game the night before.
So you work with top tier, of course. You work with Ashley Academy, right?
I used to, yeah. I'm so busy with UPS,
and working 28 kids.
Yeah. So having to go somewhere every night, I enjoy teaching baseball. I enjoy all that stuff. So I wish I could do it more, but I mean, I do as much as I can and still be able to be at the kid stuff. So yeah, I did a little bit at Ashley Academy, not as much as what I would like, but this top tier thing's been great for me.
So you kind of mentioned that you're a little bit harder on the kids, just trying to, I guess, full potential, push them to their full potential. Is there anything you think you specialize in teaching?
Defense infield is it's something that I wasn't the greatest at whenever I first got drafted, and I took pride in hitting. It was just a natural thing. I could grab a bat and I could hit. It's just something that came to me that I didn't really have to work. Well, granted, my dad had a 5-gallon bucket out every day after school, and I hit about 3 or 4 5-gallon buckets every night. So, I practiced at it, but it was a natural thing for me. Defense was something that I really had to put a lot of work into, and having all the great Rafael Belliard was one of the best infield guys I've ever been around. And he was a second baseman for the Braves back whenever they were in their heyday. Him and Jeff Glauser were up the middle. Nicest guy in the world. Very, very good at what he did. So what I do now is I teach the kids everything that I learned. And I would pick the brain of those guys. Why are we doing this? What is the reason? So that way, whenever I teach it, if somebody doesn't quite understand, I can explain why I want them to do it. Kids nowadays want to know the why more than anything. You can't just tell them go do this, because their first question is going to be, well, why? So you have to know the why before you even approach them with something that you want to change. So I've done pretty well as far as understanding everything, as far as drills and stuff like that for defense. So I enjoy it. That's what Murph gives me kind of free reign with that, and I'm extremely appreciative that he did, because it's something I'm very passionate about. The agility ladder, the footwork, all that stuff that goes into fielding is the stuff that I enjoy the most about teaching.
So I guess so essentially, because you had to learn it, you had to work hard to learn it yourself, you became a good teacher at it.
Yeah, it's funny because when you get older and as far as parenting goes, you always teach your kids the stuff that you failed at, because you don't want them to make the same mistakes you did. So I'm extremely hard on kids about the preparation side, because I wasn't good at it, and that's what cost me my baseball career. So I really pushed that side, and then I really had to learn how to play defense. I didn't take pride in defense when I was younger. Everybody just wanted to hit. I just want to hit. Let me go up there and hit 3 or 4 times, and who cares what I do on defense if I hit a couple home runs or drive in some runs. And once you get older and understand how important that side is, and I understood that I wasn't good at it, I needed to get a lot better at it, the more pride I took into that. So, it's a lot easier for me to teach at this stage in my life, because of all the work I put into it and had to ask questions for. And that's the stuff that I relay to these kids.
Wrap it up a little bit here. Is there anything I guess, what's the biggest thing you think you took out of your baseball career?
The baseball career?
Yeah.
It might be a little bit different now, because everybody nowadays has to be an extremely high-end athlete. But back whenever I would never have made it now. Back whenever I played, I was a good athlete, but I'm not a freak athlete like some of these kids are nowadays. So the best part about what was back then 20 years ago is, if you were just a good baseball player, if you knew the game, instincts, and had some of that stuff. Of course, I still had to be a decent athlete about it, but you didn't have to be 6'7" and be able to jump out of a gym or run a 4.240. You could still play that game at a high level. And that's what I enjoyed about it. I enjoyed the minds, a lot of my hitting and stuff. I played games with the pitcher and the catcher, trying to get myself into a count where I knew what pitch I was getting. There was a lot of things, the mental side of playing those types of cat and mouse games as a hitter, to set yourself up. And if you play those games inside the game, a baseball game is boring if you don't really pay attention to the game. A lot of people have trouble watching it, but if you play the game inside of watching the game, your mind never stops, and the game goes by quick, because you're trying to trying to figure everything out mentally before it happens. So that's what I enjoyed so much about the game, and it kept my mind sharp as far as that goes. And I'm just looking forward. I'm grateful for the opportunity with Top Tier, with Nevin, Cody, and Murph to allow me to try to pass that on to as many kids as we can.
So that's really all I got. If you have anything to add, feel free.
No, I'm good. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed listening to the podcast you've done previous. So hopefully this thing continues to grow and you can get many more people on here.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and that's all I got.
Hey guys, this is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.